Welcome, everyone, to the Appy Hour. Today is Tuesday, and you're in for a treat. We're having a lot of fun. And today's topic is going to be how AI is impacting newly degreed accountants. And we have a newly degreed accountant here with us. And so you're going to hear directly from her later on.
Yeah, so excited. Evan, welcome. And thanks for joining us. We're really excited about this conversation. I think we're going to have really lots and lots and lots of things to talk about.
Thank
Yeah.
you both for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're definitely glad that you're here. Heather, you want to do a quick intro to let people know who you are, what you do?
Hey, everybody. So, for those of you that I don't know or have not yet met, I'm Heather Satterley. For those of you that I do know, hey, nice to see you. I am a CPA and the director of education and media at Woodard. So, my job at Woodard is to cultivate or curate all of the content, the educational content that we teach at our Scaling New Heights conference, which is in June in Orlando. If you haven't been, you should go. We were just talking about it, Liz. We were just talking about that's where we met, and really awesome conference.
It's such a good conference, and I was telling Evan because Evan hasn't been. So any of you that are in this chat that have gone to scaling and want to tell Evan that she should go too one of these days, it changed my life. It changed my career. It changed my life, and it allowed me to connect with other people like me and share experiences. So I'm very grateful for Scaling New Heights.
Yeah, it really is a great conference. It was funny. I did a podcast recently with Deborah Kilzheimer. Kilzheimer. She corrected me. I've been saying her name wrong all along, but Deborah Kilzheimer. And she is now doing a podcast called Bookkeepers on Fire with Donna Reed. And she was telling me that she met Donna Reed at Scaling New Heights, and she said that they've got a very similar dynamic to ours. So I was really excited to hear her talk about that. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love the two of them together. Their energy is great. And Deborah's going to be joining us in 2 weeks. So that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, but they've got a very similar dynamic too.
So I'm Liz Scott, for those of you who don't know, and I get to play with technology all day. So I do have a small firm. I work with small business clients, and then I also get to play with tech and ideate and create trainings, and it's a really fun space to be in. And it allows me to actually travel and meet different people and speak at different conferences. And that is where our next guest comes in. So Evan is here. I got to meet Evan at a conference that was actually hosted and put together by the AICPA, and it was designed specifically for accountant degreed students to help them to understand the business, to get some exposure, and to have a really nice in-person event that happened to be here in Oklahoma. So I got to meet a fellow Oklahoman, Evan. So Evan, do you want to fill in some of those details about who you are and really kind of your education background?
Yes, absolutely. As she said before, my name is Evan. I have a Bachelor's of Business Administration from the University of Oklahoma. I'm pretty much Sooner born and bred, so I've lived in Norman for quite a long time. But I am currently in Australia pursuing my master's, and also getting my CPA license here, which is uh, it's good, very similar to the US essentially as far as their process and everything. I'm actually currently a student ambassador for CPA Australia, which is one of their licensing bodies that they have there. And yeah, I'm just now essentially starting my journey into kind of transitioning into getting a job, transitioning into looking for those first entry level positions in accounting.
I love that our paths crossed, and one of the things that I will boast about you is that the conference that I attended with the students was a very rigorous process to go through. So there was a lot of academic requirements and achievements and thresholds that you had to meet. So I feel like I got to run around in a room full of really intelligent students who are doing a lot of cool things, and they were from all over the US. It just so happened that Evan and I are both in Oklahoma, or were. You were in Oklahoma. And so it was a really cool opportunity to get to network. And that's what sparked today's conversation, is that you really have had some cool experiences, and this AI conversation is something that in the accounting industry, a lot of firms are talking about. How do we better ourselves? And so that really just kind of primes us for this conversation about how is AI impacting newly degreed accountants. So I'll kind of prime this up and say, with what we're seeing, a lot of accounting firms are looking for new hires that have technology backgrounds or have some education with technology, or a lot of firms are putting some of these newly degreed accountants into those technology roles where they feel like they might help to elevate the firm and maybe fill a seat that's not been there before that. So a lot of what we are experiencing is this new wave of what can newly degreed accountants offer a firm, and then vice versa, because I think that the other part of this is accountants have traditionally worked ridiculously long hours, and that's not a great selling feature whenever you're talking to a bunch of students who could get their degree in anything. And so, why would they be attracted to accounting? And we have to do better. We have to set better standards for ourselves, for our teams, for the profession in a whole. So I think that AI really does allow us to have that bridge, but how we get there is really what we're in the transition of right now, and we're feeling it firsthand ourselves.
100% Liz. And recently we've been doing a little bit of research over at the Woodard Report on this topic, on AI and education and AI, as it pertains to the profession. And I've read a couple of articles recently that both were very informative. And one that I've recently read was really awesome in the sense that it's showing that we're seeing an increase, an uptick in the number of students that are picking accounting as a major. So it's actually over the last 3 years, there was a study that was done by the AICPA, and it's actually increased over 7% over the last 3 years. Which is great news for the profession. And I think that that has a lot to do with the changing landscape that we have as far as technology and specifically AI within the profession. There's, people are starting to realize it's not just tax and auditing anymore, that there's
Mhm.
actually other things that you can get into that are super interesting. And then the second article that I read I was trying to find the link, and I will find it in a minute and I'll post it. But it was a Harvard Business Review article that I read that said that that they're actually starting to see that folks that are using AI, or no, it wasn't Harvard Business Review, it was Google, that folks that are using AI are typically getting paid more. So employers are now expecting that their top performers to be really astute in artificial intelligence and know how to apply it practically to the work that they're doing, and to want to apply it practically to the work they're doing. So both of those articles, I'll dig them both out for you and share them in the chat for everybody, but it was really interesting stuff. So I think this is going to change super duper rapidly. It has to. Where we were 3 years ago, there was really no AI training unless you were a computer scientist, right? Going to like MIT or something. Now we're starting to see state universities and colleges that are bringing business/AI degrees to really help people to lean into this. So it's really, really an exciting time. And I'm really excited to hear what Evan has to say, as from actually being in the thick of it. So, yep.
Yeah, I'll pass it over to
Yeah,
you, Stephen.
I definitely think that AI is one of the, as you said before, I think that people are going to have to adapt to AI. People are going to, no matter what it is, people either need to learn how to use AI or learn how to test for AI at the very least, kind of use those tools to kind of circumvent people from using it in the wrong ways, is the main thing that we're seeing right now. Um, the definitely the scope of things is that students are absolutely versed in AI at this point. People are using it in the classrooms all of the time. Not necessarily the institutions are implementing AI or
Mhm.
they're trying to say like no AI, like that's at least in my experience, they're trying to say no AI in the classroom, can't use it, but there's not really a test, there's not really a lot of tools that are sufficient or accurate enough in order to detect those AI tools. And students are getting smarter and learning how to go around those things as well. So in the education side, it's very difficult to we have a mismatch of energy. Educators are not wanting people to use it. Students are using it anyways. In the workforce, it's like you're expected to use AI, as you've said before, but there's not a formal training for it. So it
Mhm.
kind of gets into this situation where students are using this AI, but they're not knowing how to use it in the most efficiency because we're not taught. And then we get into the workplace and they're like, we expect you to use AI in these like grandiose ways essentially in order to get through the workday. And
Mhm.
it's such a it's such a weird, we're in a weird
Mismatch.
state right now. Yes, we're in a very like transition phase into AI, let's say that.
You
I
know,
would
it's
say,
interesting. Tiffany just brought up that ethical use of AI is so important. And the
Yes.
problem that we have is that we don't have regulations and standards established, at least not in the US. And from what I understand, not in Australia either, which is where you are, is that we don't have like, we kind of know from our moral code what ethical AI use is, and there's a lot of articles about it, but we don't have any regulation, right? And the universities, at least here, from what I've heard, are very resistant to pass AI usage policies at an institutional level, because what that does is that stunts the funding that the institutions can actually get, because we have donors obviously that are, you know, funneling money into the universities, and they want that research. So if a university takes a stance that, you know, no AI, that actually could affect the funding for the programs that they're trying to offer. So it's kind of like this, you know, I don't know, this catch
tug of
22
war.
situation, right? Are you seeing that too, Evan?
Oh, absolutely. And it becomes, I think personally, it becomes a conversation of is the professor, is the teacher teaching something that cannot be done by AI? And it
Mm.
gets very difficult because obviously if you're teaching like a very fundamental subject, so accounting, like the very managerial accounting, cost accounting, things that literally require you to go in and do the practical work, well, it's a little bit difficult to circumvent that. But I've had experience with teachers in the past for tax, for audit, where it's like, this is a human judgment situation. There's not a single way that you can do that. And I think that the teachers that are adapting and saying, okay, I'm going to make this a little bit harder because the students have these tools, that's the approach that education really needs to go into. I mean, there's like, there's teachers that will use the same material over and over again for 5, 6 years, and I really think that that needs to be changing. Now, granted, like the teacher situation is very bad right now, as far as like there's they're underfunded. A lot of schools are like struggling to keep their teachers, and it makes sense that they're wanting to save their energy because they're doing so much, and so you can't really change the material. But if you can truly find a balance of the teacher makes it interesting. And I think that Liz, when we had a previous conversation, put it in a great way. It's resource management.
Oh,
It really is for students. I think that the more that you think about, like, okay, this student can at this point work a part-time job. They have family responsibility, they have sports, they have all these things. If they can kind of offload some of the homework to AI, they're gonna do it in most situations. Now,
yeah.
granted, is it the best thing to do? Absolutely not. But if there's a chance that they can use their resources in order to circumvent the time that they're having to spend on things, absolutely they're gonna do it. And my generation is in a spot where in 2020 we lost a lot of those interpersonal skills, but we gained so much social media awareness as well. And we kind of figured out that there's a lot of resources online. There's a lot of resources on Instagram, TikTok, um, everything that can teach you, maybe in their perception, a lot more than what we're learning in schools for the most part. So it's the decision of, oh, should I use AI in order to do this in school, or should I learn about this like cool new thing? Should I learn about this cool AI that's going to help me do all of these different things without me having to spend a lot of time on it? And I think that the more that schools are against passing any kind of regulation, like you said, or passing any kind of guidelines to use it, the more that we're struggling in these classrooms. One of the main things, I hate to go to the next point, but one of the main things that we talked about was the fact that I would be sitting in classrooms and I could see from my perspective that everybody had ChatGPT pulled up on their
Oh, I
laptop.
love this. Yeah.
Mhm.
We had to read a case study and we had to answer questions about this case study. And there was already some kind of pre-guided discussion points. Everybody put those into ChatGPT. They spit out an answer, and you could watch as one of the questions was answered. They would then scroll down, put in the next question. Another person would answer the same thing that's on ChatGPT, and everyone at the same time was scrambling to then come up with the next question. And it becomes there's no individual thought in the
Mhm.
classroom because now the students are like, well, we know what the answer that she wants to hear is. She's not catching us on this. Sorry, I'm reading the question at the same time. I personally try not to use ChatGPT because I do think that it inhibits a lot of individual thought if you're using it for a lot of everyday things. And also the truth is that ChatGPT tends to be one of the worse AIs for students that I have found. I found that there's a lot more better research tools that you can use. And like even Google Gemini, I feel pulls from a lot more sources and you can kind of click on the links, whereas ChatGPT is a little bit slow, it's a little bit behind, and it can kind of spread a lot of misinformation. Um, but yeah, it's creating this like classroom
Generalized.
full of people that are just not thinking,
They're not
essentially.
Yeah.
using, they're not learning the critical thinking skills that I know that has
No.
made me a better a professional in my career is learning that problem solving, making the mistakes, and then having to figure out how to fix it, rather than asking the bot, "How do I do it right the first time?" You know, and
Yes.
granted, getting it right the first time is a good thing to do, but
Yes.
you lose out on the what they say, when you make a mistake, you internalize the solution, and you
Mm.
also, your brain is now wired to see very quickly when that mistake comes, when you see it again, if
Because
you're
it's
never
painful.
because it's painful.
Yes.
And that's how our brains work. So yeah, it's crazy. I have a friend who's a professor, and he actually banned computers in the classroom because he found the exact same thing, and just
Mm.
it was disheartening to know that there was no thought going on. People are just going through the motions. It was data entry, right? And then
Yep.
regurgitation of whatever it was that was coming up.
Yeah. I think that, we've talked about some of these things, but I think that the exposure in education to AI, and then from what you're saying, is limited. And, I've got a daughter who's in college. And so from her experience, same thing that you were talking about, the professors are very AI adverse, but the students, um, I spoke at one of the universities and the professors were angry at me, which was kind of a weird thing because I was like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that. I'm not somebody who enjoys being in a confrontational situation." I found myself there. But the students were coming over and they were asking more AI questions, and the students are using AI. Absolutely. If you're in a situation where you've got to juggle life and homework, you're going to use every tool possible in order to get through whatever the demand is. And AI is allowing a lot of students to be able to meet the demand, because there is a growing demand too, I believe, inside of the classroom. So it's an interesting dynamic because in education, I don't think that we're seeing enough of it. But then I feel like in your practical life, Evan, you're saying that you're leaning into more of those experiences in order to be able to help you.
Yes, absolutely. So I've mostly worked with local accounting firms, and twice, in fact, pretty much both reasons why I was kind of hired on in the company is to help with some of that technology, to help with some of that AI. The first time we had a large bookkeeping situation, and all of the information was imported through AI, and AI got pretty much the majority of it wrong. So it was my job to go back in and fix that. Which is where I think a lot of like the students' AI literacy now very much helps in the workplace because we know a lot of things that we're going to eventually like use in the workplace. Even if the employer may or may not know that this thing exists, that's what we're bringing into the workplace is all of these new different things that we're learning from social media, that we're learning from other students in regards to AI, in kind of fixing all of these things that are not very well implemented yet when it comes into firms. The second time is there was an AI software that was supposed to do a lot of data entry, but it was very expensive. And I kind of went in as that person that's like, well, it's kind of a lot cheaper to pay someone to do it that's willing to do it rather than it is to pay for this AI software, make sure it's not giving any mistakes, make sure it's getting all of the nuances correct. So it's very, I think it does create a lot of opportunity. People talk about job loss all of the time with AI, and I truly do think that it creates some opportunities as well. Um, in regards to people actually using this AI in order to create jobs in the new marketplace, especially entry level jobs. If you can have a student that's testing your AI, that's going back and checking the work on your AI, even programming the AI, as I've seen, like new degree accountants are mostly focusing on data analytics. They're mostly focusing on going into learning a little bit of coding, and we're becoming those technology aficionados essentially instead of your IT experts, instead of your computer science people. Like all of that is being used and is very important nowadays to be technology efficient in accounting.
Mhm. You know, I just posted another article. I've been posting all these articles that I've been reading in the chat, and this one is from Harvard Business Review, where they're talking about this new position called an AI agent manager, and that all of the big companies have these new emerging positions, and that's their job, Evan, is to watch these agents at work. And the examples that they give are customer service, right, at like Walmart, other big companies where the AI agent manager manages a team of AI bots that is actually interacting with the customers and looking for errors, looking for incidents of dissatisfaction, and then basically watching that data and then giving feedback. So and tweaking, right, the information. So I think that's exactly, when I read that article, it absolutely resonated with me in accounting. I'm like, this is where we're going, right, where we're going to be managing those bots and handling the exceptions and doing the human work, which is the relationship building, the coaching, that type of thing.
Eventually, I do think that AI is going to get to the point, like when we're training it, all of the practical, all of the numbers-based accounting is going to be able to be done by AI. The question
Mm.
is, all of the nuances are never going to be kept. I mean, you can never train an AI to do human interaction. You can never train an AI to say like, oh, well, this business owner actually does this thing, and so it actually creates this account and it creates this thing. Like you can't, there's no way that you can have those specific things go through. And so it's going to be everybody's job, honestly, even the professionals that are already in the game, to ensure that AI is not making these mistakes, that AI is constant. Everybody's going to have to be a little bit of an agent, honestly, in everything that they do, in their review work, in their actual like talking into clients and things like that, because people are also getting their information from AI now. So everything
Mm.
that a client comes up to you with, you have to kind of take with a grain of salt. You have to kind of use your own practical experience to say, hey, like even though this was said on the internet, even though this was said through AI, here's how this thing actually works.
Yeah.
You know, I think that some of the things that you've said are interesting, and even going back to the role that you had where you had to do some cleanup work because the AI didn't work as it was expected to work. I think that many of us are experiencing that right now, that there's some overhype with the AI tools that are available, and sometimes there's errors, and then you have to have this mixture of you have a group that feels very comfortable with technology. And so coming in and making large swath changes, I would say that a lot of younger generations are faster with technology. Sometimes the experience isn't there, so you still need to lean heavily into, some of those higher level accountants who have been doing it seniored. Know, like you were just talking about, what's the implications of this account being created? What's the effect that it happens over here in the reporting? There's still this back and forth dynamic that I think we need each other. And it's always nice whenever we can lean into each other's strengths.
We're talking about AI. I mean, AI is a technology, and we've had technology in accounting for a long, long time, right? Back to the calculator, back whenever that was released, and however decades ago. But we've always needed that review cycle, and it's no different with AI. We've always needed that review cycle. I use tax software to prepare my tax returns. I use general ledger software to prepare financial statements. I still have to tick and tie. I know it's doing the calculations, but if it got miscoded, I need to go through and review that. And I do believe that, I know that there's technology that's making that easier, but I think that as a profession, it's going to be a very long time before, as a profession, we're comfortable saying it's always right. We don't even have to look at it.
Yeah.
I also think that the current education that we have, at least what I've experienced, doesn't really encourage review as much. And I think that your point is very interesting, and I was thinking about it and comparing, like, for example, comparing things to last year on a tax return. That's not something that's really covered or talked about in school, and you lose a lot of these review skills, especially if the homework is practical, if the homework has set answers. Most people are pretty comfortable, at least in my generation, with a right or wrong. You can say, okay, it's
Mhm.
wrong. Now I know it's this answer. And I think that we're missing that part of, okay, why did we get this wrong? Why is this a thing that's happening? Because a lot of the current education relies on, okay, you learn something, you take a test, you understand that you got it wrong, but you can't go back to that test. You're not retaking that test like you can in earlier grades. So it's like, okay, that goes over my head. We got this wrong. That's fine. Move on to the next thing. And review is one of those things that really is like it's the difference between people who use AI efficiently and people who don't use AI efficiently. I agree wholeheartedly that AI is best used as an aggregation tool, whether that be aggregation of information, whether that be aggregation, summarizing an article, whether that be pulling from all of these different opinions. That's what I think that AI is best used for. But if you don't go back and see where did that come from, how did this person come to this conclusion, etc., you're not going to be able to use it in the best way possible.
I agree with you. And that's why I think that AI in accounting makes perfect sense, because you can aggregate all of those years worth of data, trends that we see across the board, price increases, labor increases. We just see, a lot of data, and it's hard to churn through that fast enough to be able to be helpful. And so I think that AI has a huge space to,
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
better us there.
Yeah.
So one other thing that I want to ask you, because I think that this is such a funny conversation in my house. So my kids are Gen Zers. Uh, and when they talk about Gen Alpha, they have a distinction between the two. And I think it's something that I hadn't really considered quite the gap there. But what I think has happened so quickly is the technology has grown in such a way that my Gen Zers see themselves as this sandwich between yes, they had phones, but they didn't have AI. Now that they're old enough to be able to use AI, they have it in applications everywhere, kind of like what you're saying, Evan, that personal AI usage has helped you in the profession and with education. But what they're seeing is that Gen Alpha is growing up with AI. So AI in games, AI in even some of this schoolwork. So some of the lower elementary schools are doing more with AI than even the colleges are right now. So it's this weird, interesting gap. And I think what you were just talking about too, with being able to make distinctions, to critically think and to stop and to learn what the errors are. I think that even that Gen Z, Gen Alpha is going to have some variation on their abilities.
Yes, for sure. Gen Alpha is always very interesting to me because I mean, there's the term that we have now, an iPad baby, like kids that are growing
Yeah.
up using application. And once again, it's resource management for the parents. If you give a kid an iPad, they're going to be way more entertained. You're going to have more time to do things throughout the day. But at the same time, you're giving your kid an iPad at a very young age. And now, all of these foundational classes that you get in elementary school, there's always a chance that there is a kid that is not getting any foundation at all put into their brain because they're going home, they're going on the iPad, they're using it to solve homework. I almost can guarantee you there are situations where you used to come home and if you needed help with your homework, you would ask your parent for help. I am pretty sure now it's okay, you go home, you try to do your homework, and then you ask AI for help so that you can get on the games faster, that you can get on
Yep.
something else faster. And I think that's the key difference. I think that a lot of Gen Z, the attitude towards AI is generally negative, actually, because
Yeah.
we are focused on the ethical concerns. We are very focused on how this is going to affect our brains because we've seen both in equal
Yep.
quantities. Whereas Gen Alpha has this conception that it's like, okay, this is what we're already here. We've already
Yep.
grown up with this. We've already done this. Um,
They don't
AI
know
is good
different.
for us. Yeah, they don't know any different from anything else. They've grown up in the era that AI is already here, it's happening, and they're using it. No matter how much you monitor a kid, no matter how much you do individually in schools, there's never a guarantee that they're going to find these resources and easily too. You have to convince them that it's worth it not to use AI rather than just ban it altogether.
Yep.
Yeah, no, my daughter, I have two kids that are Gen Z, and my daughter, who's now 25, is anti-AI. Now she's in the arts, and so it's a little personal for her
Mhm.
in the sense that, that was her kind of her talent was creating these beautiful images. And it was something that set her apart from the average bear, right? Is that she's very talented. And so she's definitely concerned about the ethical ramifications of people, artists work being stolen and recreated through artificial intelligence. And then I also think there's an emotional piece to that, right?
Mhm.
That if you have spent your life being celebrated for a talent that you have that now can be done better than a machine, I think there is something about that, right, that should be looked at.
It's a displacement, and
Mhm.
a I think that what we're in is this, you were saying transition. I think that's exactly what it is because we don't need data entry clerks. That's that's done. And we're at a place right now where a lot of the AI GL tools can auto reconcile for you. So that entire
Mhm.
job is going away. So now what we are we? We're data interpreters where we're able to, have the conversation, the human element. And, I guess, that's an interesting question. I would say, Evan, how prepared do you feel like your generation is to be able to deal with the human contact in accounting?
I actually personally feel that we're not prepared. Specifically because of COVID, because of 2020, I feel that a lot of Gen Z has lost their interpersonal interactions with people. And I think that, especially in accounting, the perception is that you sit at a desk, you do your job, you go home. You don't really have to know everybody in the business. And I completely disagree. I mean, I'm a social person anyways, but a lot of people go into the profession specifically for the benefit of they're not having to interact with people. They are that data entry person. They are the clerk. But the thing is that if you want to be able to survive now in the age of AI, you have to be able to know how to talk to people. You have to be able to explain things to people, which is not something that is, I think, encouraged or talked about in our generation, is how to explain how to teach. Um, because classrooms are also very huge,
Yeah.
and people are very discouraged from speaking. You mentioned a point at the very beginning of the podcast, and it just reminded me of how now in the classroom, a lot of people are discouraged from speaking. Raising your hand is very embarrassing. Like Heather was saying, people don't want to get it wrong. And I think that that lack of trying, that lack of communicating with your professor is that exact thing that we're missing in our generation in order to succeed.
It's hurry up and do. What's the output?
Yes, exactly, exactly.
That's a struggle because I think that you're right that we did have a shift in the workforce and just in our human lives when we experienced COVID, especially Gen Z. You were in development. And that really changed the way that we interacted with each other. Social media platforms went through the roof, and we've
Yes.
never gone backwards. We've only learned more and more ways to make those types of platforms more addictive, more engaging, more predictable. Like, what kinds of algorithms does Evan like to look at on our social feeds? What does Liz like to look at her social feeds? So we're just more enticed because they've learned that
There's even
learned
like
us.
there's like a major push to create apps that will stop you from using your phone. I know several people in my life
Yeah.
that are using them, and it's literally they will track what you're doing on your phone, and they'll immediately, as soon as you open an app, close it. And there's this Hank Green is a really good example. He created a specific app that makes you put down your phone also. And Hank Green he's the creator of Crash Course, which is one of the things that my generation absolutely grew up with. And there's this push in my generation to get off the phones, to actually go out and experience what life is so that we can go back and kind of use those skills in our everyday life. Because we didn't get that. I mean, truly, the most developmental years of our lives were kind of taken by this era of COVID, this era of social awareness, which is not a bad thing. I think a lot of great things socially came out of COVID. However, you have this side of, well, now we've lost how to speak to people. Now we've lost how to have like a lot of real life conversations with people.
I think it was going to happen anyway. I think that the conditions just primed it to happen so much faster.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like this readiness gauge. So, most grads aware. Absolutely. Most firms are implementing AI to some degree. but where are we on our comfort level? Where are we on our proficiency? Where are we on our education? Where are we in our conversation about it? I feel like all of those are very much lacking. And so it's
Yes.
happening at such a fast pace that that's part of the problem.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel that on top of everything, it's kind of it's kind of difficult because I mean we're always taught now at the very least in education that oh like you should be ready like firms don't want to be able to train you. You want to be as ready as possible for a firm and just jump in to whatever they have to offer. But now there's so many applications. So now you have these things of like, okay, ChatGPT, for example, ChatGPT, that's like the main AI that everyone knows, loves, maybe Gemini, maybe some other ones that come up in the search engines, but firms are at the point where they're like, oh, we have this very specific AI that will do all of this for you. There's no education or training on that quite yet because schools are not ready to implement that. And now you're having to pack in a whole section about AI in education. You're skipping out on the foundations by putting in a unit on AI. It's a very difficult balance that we're still trying to find.
And I expect, I mean, it's going to change. It's going to keep changing as AI changes, right? And as we start to see some of these regulations roll out, which they undoubtedly will, um, they kind of have to, right? I'm
Right.
guessing they have to at some point. So, yeah, it's interesting that, you know, it's interesting that we're trying to marry the practical application in education, but it's a complete moving target. As we know, with big institutions, being agile is not necessarily their strong point. So, Intuit is actually. I'm writing an article for the Woodard Report on this right now. Intuit has done a accounting pipeline um, pilot that they did at Utah Valley University, where they created two courses, a 300 level and a 400 level course that are teaching them about small business, how to support small businesses. And it's really fascinating. They're using the curriculum that they are putting their pro advisors through. So the bookkeeping training, the CAS training, and the QuickBooks product training to help give them a foundation of once they graduate, so they have that foundational knowledge of how general ledger applications work, how to work through actual business problems. And they're working, that the professors and the teachers the adjunct professors that are teaching this are actually practicing accountants. So it's seen, and it did a pilot last year and it's had great success. They're actually in their second year and they're going to keep building it out. But I think that's really the way we need to go, is to have industry and and academia kind of come together,
Mhm.
especially in our profession, because we're so technology driven that yes, theory is important. Yes, we need to understand the underlying principles behind it, but we also need to understand how the tools work, and that includes artificial intelligence for sure.
I
And
like
I
that
think
we've got
that
that progress happening. Go
Mhm.
ahead, Evan.
I think that also accomplishes both goals, as we were talking about earlier. Teachers are not really wanting to use AI. If we bring in these scenarios, if we bring in these situations that are actual things that have actually happened in the field, things that people actually experience, there's a less need to use AI because people, like students, one of the main things that you hear in my generation, I feel, is like, oh, when are we actually going to use this? When is this
Mhm.
actually going to happen? And I feel that if you bring in those situations that have literally happened, students get more interested. You have a less use of AI in I'm gonna say a not smart way. And I hate to put it like that, but essentially, like if you're just using AI to answer a question, I don't think that it's a smart way to use it. And you get into these more nuanced conversations of like now you're using AI as an aggregation tool, like, oh,
Mhm.
like how many cases of this have happened in the past? What are the like different odds of these things happening? Like you're asking better questions and structuring
Mhm.
better questions to feed an AI rather than just question, answer, question, answer.
Right. So the
You know,
prompting, I mean, really they need
yes.
what they need to be teaching in the universities and colleges, prompt engineering, right?
Which
Which
is
Yes.
critical thinking. So it
it is
is still
critical thinking.
stretching the brain, which is good.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things too that I'll say that my husband works for the government, and they have a had a huge push to utilize AI. And they've never adopted anything as quickly as they are adopting AI. So there's a lot of new programs that are being launched almost weekly. And I think that is a clear indication that AI in business is going to be something that we're going to see more and more of. So one of the actual positive things that is coming out of these types of conversations that are happening in accounting is that we're actually learning ahead of a lot of those businesses, which means that we're going to be better positioned to be able to help our clients with AI usage.
Yes.
It's not going to go away. It's just going to become more and more. So the more that we're comfortable, the better that we're actually going to be able to serve our clients in the very, very near future because they're facing these same types of questions themselves.
They are absolutely. No,
We're just a little bit ahead of them.
yeah. No, it's
It's
important.
also like,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The recruiting process is now becoming a conversation. There's a great podcast from The Economist that talks about this in detail. I think it's called Boss. I forgot what it's called, but there's an economist that the Economist recently put out a podcast, and it talks about how now even recruiters are having to implement AI because they're getting AI applications. Now there's
Mhm.
just a conversation back and forth between AI and this is the job force. This is like how people are hiring people is now absolutely changing. And it's like, well, you have to use AI in order to get the AI to recognize your application, but it can't be so AI that the AI then rejects your application.
We're gonna have to get to a better place because
We
I don't
are.
I don't feel like that's sustainable.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we have not to do a shameless plug for Scaling New Heights, but to do a shameless plug for Scaling New Heights, which is the conference we mentioned earlier. We have a whole AI track that we're doing this year from soup to nuts. So, introduction to AI for accounting professionals. We have two sessions on prompting. So, how to really train your AI to have your voice and to know your business, and then prompting on the logical, the critical thinking piece. We actually have a course called Critical Thinking. So we're putting all of this, you know, we've got over 100 sessions this year, but we've got this whole track on AI that is really to help the professional to navigate all of this, and what do we know when we're bringing in the experts and the practitioners to teach it. So it's going to be really impactful this year. I'm very excited about it. And we're going to have Daniel Susskind speaking on Sunday, who wrote the A World Without Work, where he's
Which is
actually
a
looking forward.
fantastic read.
Exactly. So yeah.
And you know, it actually lines up perfectly with this question. So you're talking about A World Without Work is the title of the book that I think that we should all read because it applies definitely to our profession. But when it ties into accounting and this concept of work is going to be different, I think that we're primed to be able to see it firsthand. And we're in a spot that is very unique because we're going to look at our clients across the board, the businesses that we work with across the board. How are they changing? How are they evolving? How are they adapting to this new workforce? What does that look like? How do the rules change? How does the pay change? How does cost change? Pricing change? All of those things, we're actually collecting a lot of that data. And I find it super, super fascinating. So I'm very, very much looking forward to hearing Daniel speak at Scaling New Heights.
Absolutely. And I just threw the link in if people want to take a look at the sessions. Most of them are out there. We still have a few that we're gonna be posting over the next few weeks, but uh for the most part it's ready to go. So
So, in this idea of what should accounting firms focus on when hiring new grads in the AI era, what do you think, Evan? Like, where should accounting firms be putting their resources whenever they're hiring?
I think the first thing is really strongly vetting their interviews. Because I really do think that now there is a less focus on what your education there's a less focus on how much you know because of AI. Because I there's truly so many videos out there to teach you how to do something. AI can tell you how to do something backwards, forwards. You can learn a lot of those foundational skills. What accounting firms need to be looking for are people that can understanding the nuance. That's what it is. When you're in
Mm,
these interviews, you need to make sure that these accountants still do have personal skills. It doesn't matter like how many like certifications you have. Even now, the certifications that people are getting, I think that there is so many different things that like you can just get a certification online in 3 weeks, put it on your resume, then it looks good. You know more. That's not necessarily something that I'm not going to say matters, but it's not something that is useful anymore because at this point, everybody can know something. How many people can apply something? How many people can speak to people in a way that makes them feel comfortable with
yep.
accounting? I feel that one of the most misunderstood things about accounting is that it's high language, that it's a bunch of people that are like quote unquote, I get boring a lot when we hear accounting. We need to transition these accounting roles into something that's more personable, that's more connecting with your clients. It's more creating these relationships with your clients. And I think that's the perfect thing to focus on in this new AI era. It's like now we can kind of put aside the desk part of the situation. How are you interacting with your clients? How are you giving them the newest information in a way that they can understand? A lot of people say
Yep.
that accounting is also an aging profession, and you still are going to have to deal with clients that don't even use technology at all. How are you going to use your skills and your interpretation of data in order to speak to people, in order to get somebody who doesn't even understand how to use a cell phone into understanding how we did all this work for them? I think that's the most important thing that firms should be focusing on.
So leaning into the humanity, like leaning into the things
Yes.
that humans do really, really well, right? And should be doing really well. Yeah, love it.
It makes me think of years ago, whenever I would work with financial statements, my mentor had said, you need to get the storytelling script so that way you can talk to the client. And so it was like, oh, it suddenly became so clear to me. Storytelling, it's like, oh my God, bedtime stories. I really, really looked forward to those as a kid. I looked forward to them with my children. And so it became something that it's like I started to look at the financial statements as a way that I could have a bedtime story with the client. I could talk to them about, what are we seeing? What are we interpreting? Making it come to life, bringing in those black and white words that are on that page, and just like a book, start to paint those pictures. I'm okay 100% heading back to those days. Less compliance work, more storytelling. Yes, please.
Hmm.
Oh, absolutely. In Australia, it's like the culture here in Australia is that you don't get jobs by applying. That's straight. Look, everybody has told me straight up, you don't get jobs by applying. You get jobs by having coffee with people. You
Yeah.
have to open up those opportunities for yourself. And I think that it's it's such a like it's an interesting thing because if you don't have those skills, and I also see a lot of non-English speakers here in Australia that are struggling to keep up with the English. They're using AI in order to do it, but it's like if you can't sit down and have those practical skills and be able to talk to people, even if you're struggling with English, if you can get somebody to understand you in a way that works for you personally, I think that is so much more important than using the correct English, formatting your resume in such a very specific way so that the algorithm can put your resume at the top. It's about meeting people. It's about making sure that you know how to say hi to people, introduce yourself to people.
Absolutely. Well, I also I'll throw in something that I found really interesting that you were talking about too, Evan, is that we don't think about it because we're here in the US whenever when we're communicating back and forth with these different GPT models. But now that you're in Australia, you're seeing that a lot of those GPT models are very American based.
Yes, it is something that it's incredible. I had a story from a friend the other day, actually. Um, Basically, he studied abroad in Japan, and they were doing a class, and everybody was using ChatGPT, and it was so noticeable because you're in a Japanese classroom. You have predominantly Chinese, Korean. There was a lot of Australian students in that room, and now the language is all focused on this very high context
Mhm.
conversation where a lot of languages are low context. Australians speak a low context of English in the sense that they speak it exactly how it is. It's very straight. But if you use ChatGPT, it's very obvious because now you're speaking at a very high context. You're not being very blunt about things. That is something that I really truly don't think that AI is ever going to be able to adapt to every single specific country, culture, language. And if you're aiming for a job, in your country, if you're aiming in a job, even in your region, right? There's a difference between having a lot of Southern hospitality in the South when it comes to business versus in the North, where it's a very like
Mhm.
different conversation when you're having with people. If everybody's using ChatGPT, it all becomes the same droning language and it's very obvious.
It is very obvious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that goes back to you talking about the classroom where the answers were starting to become the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all become just alike.
Yes.
No thanks. Well,
Well, Evan, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We've been getting such great feedback from our attendees, and we're just so grateful that you are able to share your experience with us. I think this has been a really important conversation. And I know it's early for you. Hopefully you got a cup of coffee before you got here.
Yes, I'm all good. I've had breakfast and everything, so I'm ready to go
Okay,
for the day.
awesome.
well, I'm certainly glad that you joined us because I think that, we have to bridge that gap. We have to figure out our new way forward. It's evolving very, very rapidly. So I appreciate you joining us in this conversation.
Thank you guys
Absolutely.
so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast. I mean, it truly just feels like a conversation I'm having with like a friend, honestly.
Well, we'd love to have you come back and check in with us again. We'll reach out definitely in the future and kind of see how things are going. Because as we said, this is a moving target and things are going to change really, really quickly. So, all right. And we've got lots of thank yous coming in through the chat. So thanks again, not just from us, but from all of our peeps out there. So thank you. So
Yes,
coming
thank you to everyone listening.
Oh, wonderful. So coming up, we have on March 10th, we have how two accounting firms are pressure testing AI. So this is going to be a great episode in a couple of weeks. We're going to have Devil Kilsheimer and Matthew Tate from Decimal come on, and they're going to share how they have done some implementation of AI in their firms, and they're going to give us a reality check on, where are we, what has worked well for them, what are some of the challenges that they've seen. So it's going to be really a wonderful conversation, and we hope that you guys will join us. And then further into March, we have an accounting AI showcase with Appventory, which is an app unlike any that I've ever seen. It is not an inventory application. So I think most people think, oh, it's inventory. Nope, it is not. It is actually for those of us that are working with clients on implementing technology. You're definitely going to want to see this technology. And then finally in April, we're going to have the Accounting AI Showcase with Aider. So Aider's going to be joining us to take a look at their solution. So we're excited about that as well. So lots of really cool stuff coming up.
Absolutely. Very much looking forward to it. Lots of good things to come. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And Evan, special thank you to you. And we will see you all next time. Until then, take care.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.